Hey everyone, Dominic here. I want to talk for a few moments about learning to lament. We step into this world with a cry. Romans tells us that all of creation also groans because Jesus has not yet returned and made all things right. We're taught at a young age to not complain, but what if there was a way that was not only okay, but biblical to complain? We're taught often to try to avoid expressing things like sorrow. But what if God actually called us to it? And as messy as it is, it was actually part of the process from bringing us from that distress into a healing, restorative, resolved place of trusting and hoping in God once again. That process is called lament. Half of the Psalms are Psalms of lament. There's an entire book in the Bible called Lamentations. We need to, I believe, rekindle the practice of lament and incorporate it into our prayer lives, individually and corporately. So what is lament? Simply put, lament is the honest vocalizations of grief to God from that place between pain and resolve. Lament is the language for that space of tension. Why should we lament? Well, first of all, it's all over the Bible. Jesus affirmed and lamented himself. Lament is part of confession and repentance. Lament leads us to the heart of God to grieve over the things that he grieves over. And lament leads us to hope in God, like Lamentations 3 says. Speaking of hope, what does lament lead to? Ultimately, it leads to restored trust and hope in God. God has created a process that takes us from the experience of loss and distress to the resolve of healing and trust in him. Lament is that process. What does it look like? Well, there's three basic elements or parts to every lament. Part one is that we turn to God and bring our complaint to him. Part number two is that we ask God boldly for help. Part number three is we rehearse God's promises and attributes for the purpose of restoring trust and hope in God. This is the culmination there at the end of the first two. We are wanting to end with ultimately recalling God's character and attributes in order to restore trust and hope in our hearts. Lastly, I want to answer the question, so then in my life, what do I even lament about? In short, anything that grieves your heart or the heart of God. May God help us rekindle this ancient practice and in turn restore a sensitivity to the things that are close to his heart.